Well, welcome everyone to Who Writers Read. I'm Ginger Eager, one of your hosts.
I'm Jodie Forster, the other host.
Today's guests are fiction writer and essayist Lyndsey Ellis, and she's going to be reading from her 2021 novel, Bone Broth. Yeah. And we're also with poet and performance artist Bridget Bianca with her 2020 collection, Be Trouble. And so we'll start with a reading, as we always do. We'll start with a reading from each of our authors. Then we'll have a conversation. At the end, there's time for questions. So if you have any questions, you can put them either in the chat or you can put them in the little Q&A feature at the bottom. I'll track both of those. Who wants to read first?
This always happens. Everyone, okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Come on. Step up.
I guess I'll go ahead and get it out the way. I get us rolling because I'm really excited to hear Bridget. So
I'm going to read your bio. So Lyndsey Ellis is a fiction writer and essayist who's passionate about exploring intergenerational struggles and Black resiliency in the Midwest. She earned her BA in English from the University of Missouri, Columbia, and her MFA in writing from California College of the Arts in San Francisco. She's been a recipient of the San Francisco Foundation's Joseph Henry Jackson Literary Award, and she's received a grant from the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund for her fiction. Her work has appeared in Coeli Journal, Catapult, Electric Literature, Joyland, Entropy, Shondaland, and several anthologies. She's the prose editor for Media and The Account, a journal of poetry, prose, and thought. She lives in St. Louis, Missouri, and Bone Broth is her first novel. I'm excited to hear her read from it.
Thank you for the great intro, Ginger and Jodie. So I'm just going to read a piece from the middle of the book. I'm not going to really give too much away. I will say that this does center around a Black woman who's also a widow and a former activist, and her 3 kids who actually discover her secret of being just that. So I'm going to read apart from Lois, who's the middle child of Justine, who's the main character, the feminist activist or ex-feminist activist. Before I do that, I would be remiss not to say something. We lost somebody really great and special today. The late, great, I can't believe I'm saying late now, Bell Hooks, who is just amazing. And that's when I said feminist, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't feel right if we didn't at least have a little moment of silence to acknowledge that her existence and everything that she poured into the world, basically. So before that, I guess if you wouldn't mind, we just had a quick moment of silence. Okay, so I will just basically read this piece, and in that whole vein of feminism, this is one reason that I decided to read this piece for Lois. Auntie Kit had a smile as big and infectious as Shaka Khan's while she sang "I'm Every Woman." She merrily waved a chicken bone in her hand like an ethnic deity. Her jewelry slapped against the heads of excited children surrounding her in the backyard. Between verses, she paused to rub her bum against the back of her husband's dashiki or turn around to kiss him on the top of his head. When she saw Lois, she dragged her onto the patch of grass that was the dance floor. Lois's knees buckled beneath her jean dress. Her hands hung passionlessly at her sides. She felt like one of those acne-scarred kids attempting to blend into the walls at one of her old high school dances, only there was no wall to cling to, no punch bowl to hover around. "Come on, girl," yelled Auntie Kit over the music. "Shake those hips." Auntie Kit held Lois's palms up above her head. The woman's hands were hot and damp. She reminded Lois of one of the sweaty women standing on either side of her, then 18-year-old self in her childhood church. The women spoke in strange tongues and closed themselves around the newcomer who caught the Holy Ghost during a Sunday night revival service. At the Oakland Yard Party, Shaka's song faded, replaced by Parliament's flashlight. The sound system's ruthless snare tore into Lois and vibrated through her, one limb at a time. The more she tried to contain herself, the less control she had. Everything tingled, and then she felt herself rippling. Her body shuddered, like it was weeping to the beat, struck like a cymbal with nowhere to go but out. In the distance, through the cluster of people on the dance floor, Lois caught a glimpse of Ahmad standing over a group of men playing dominoes. He turned as if he sensed Lois's attention on him and looked back at her, his face lighting up as she moved. The quilted sky with its peekaboo sun opened out to her, and in that moment, she was no one's angel or devil or daughter or sister or friend or lover or aching once mother. She wasn't a neighbor or boss or worker or guest or hostess or congregant or citizen or race or sex. She was no one, but she was hers. She was all hers. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful section. Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you.
A lot of praise. Okay, I'm going to read Bridget's bio here. Bridget Bianca is a poet and professor from South Central Los Angeles. She received her BA in English from Howard University and her MFA in writing from Otis College of Art and Design. She has performed her poetry all around Southern California, including features at the World Stage, the Southern California Poetry Festival, Los Angeles Lit Crawl, the Table Lit, Lit Fet Pasadena, Rap Saloon, La Palabra, and the Unfadable Reading Series. She was most recently published on culturalweekly.com and in Obsidian, Literature and Arts in the African Diaspora. She is one half of the literary curating team, Making Room for Black Women, with Sonura Williams of My Lit Box, and co-host of the quarterly reading series at the Women's Center of Creative Work with Nina Rota. Bridget works as a writer and an educator, seeking to serve the people in moments most forget or ignore. Her first book of poetry, Be Trouble, was released by Writ Large Press in 2020. Oops, sorry. We're looking forward to this reading, Bridget.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. And thank you, Lindsay, for sharing first, because you gave me a chance to like center myself and really get lost in your story, take the nerves out a bit. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to share a couple of pieces from Be Trouble. And now I don't know which one to pick because you inspired me so much. I'm like, I should read that one. No, I should read that one. I'm going to start with a poem called #Black Girls Are Real, since we're going to go with the feminist push here, okay? There's a lot of talk about magical Black girls who float on clouds of vaporized melanin, whose skin is a never-ending sepia rainbow. Where are the girls who feel invincible when their eyebrows are fleeky, when their edges are laid, girls in nameplate gold necklaces and earrings, copper wire wound around their braids with burnt tips? Where are the girls who pop their gum and smack their tongues and kiss their teeth to punctuate, to add emphasis? Where are the girls who never get to be girls at all? They are females with the tone of bitch. They are, that's my bitch, with the tone of homie. They are, she the homie though, with the tone of lover. Do we still love her? Girls with praying hands behind their ears and rosaries on their ankles. Girls with script on the small of their backs. Or did we decide they weren't magic to? Do they have to have flowers in their hair, fake freckles splashed across their noses and cheeks? Can they have a constellation of hyperpigmentation on their foreheads? What about the girls in straight backs and fades? The girls in fresh J's and Tims? Girls who sound less like tinkling glass and more like the kind of bass in trunks that makes earrings shake? Bamboo, of course, at least 2 pair. Do they have to listen to alternative music and dance like they have fairy wings? Can they buck and twerk and get hyped when they hear the opening strings of a Cash Money record, or the horns calling for Spody Odie Dopalicious angels, lips pursed in concentration, tongues out, daring you to get like them? Girls with mile-long lashes that sweep you off your high horse, girls rocking the kind of colorful cornrows and braids that you will call ratchet until they storm the runways, that you will call ghetto until they are dubbed unicorns when on somebody else's head. Girls who flash their grills when they stuntin' and pose so you know their nails is done and snatch the air when they speak. Are those girls just as magical, or are they too loud for you when they greet each other? Are they doing too much for you when they get a little recognition? When they ask for a little more money, when they demand a little more respect? Do they get to shine too, or are they too bright for you? I would say make room for them, but it don't matter because these girls are busting through. So make way for them. Roll out a carpet of Crown Royal bags. Make sure there are lemon pepper wings on the menu and Hennessy in their cups, and watch them work their magic. And so that is for the Black girls who don't always get included in conversation about Black girl magic. Black girls like me and Black girls like the girls that I grew up with. The girls that I look at every day. Let's see here. Let's grab another one. This one is called The Talk. And it is one of what I call my mothering poems. I'm not a mother currently, but I write a lot from the perspective of a Black mother, because I think that their voices are often missing in conversation, though we push them forward to speak often as a mouthpiece for other reasons, right? We ask them to quiet the masses, tell them don't do this, don't do that. We don't get a chance to really hear their concerns. And so I have a Black mother, and so I decided to give Black mothers a voice in my book. So here's a poem called The Talk. Lesson number 1. No toy guns, no running in public, no hands in pockets, no outside voices. Act like you got the sense God gave you. Act like you've been somewhere. Act like you got somewhere to be. Act like you got a mama who raised you within an inch of your life. Don't you cut up in front of these white people. Do you want them to take you away from me? Tie all bags at the top before entering. Don't touch anything you don't plan to buy. And didn't I tell you to take your hands out of your pockets? Don't swing your arms when you walk. Take your hands off your imagination. You acting like you grown. Mind your mouth. I swear for God, you better not let me catch you doing something you ain't supposed to, and you better not have nothing in your pockets. I don't care what they said to you. I don't care what the others get away with. They are not my child. I don't care if their parents don't hold their breath when they see a face flash across the evening news or their news feeds. Just bring your tail home. I don't want you out of my sight. Because if I can't see you, if I can't hear you breathing, then every siren is always headed in your direction. Every face in despair, every body on the ground, every bowed head in cuffs, every gasp for breath, every plea for mercy, every hand up in the air, every fist balled in anger or fear looks like it belongs to you, and you are mine. But they can take you away from me, don't you know that? You've got to know better, do better, be better. And I know even that won't save you, so what else can I do? So lesson number 1, no toy guns, no running in public, no hands in pockets, no outside voices. Act like you got the sense God gave you. Act like you've been somewhere. Act like you got somewhere to be. Act like you got a mama who raised you within an inch of her life, and get your behind back in this house, and don't make me tell you again. And so that's for the mamas. And I want to end with one for a particular couple of mamas. This poem, thank y'all so much. I now see the hands. I looked up finally. This one is for Mamie Till Mobley, when she was asked why she allowed people to view Emmett's body, and why she allowed it to be photographed and archived. She said, I want the world to see this is what racism looks like. And I want to read this because often we are questioning why. And the reason is because you need to know this. And so I think both of our books are examples of people need to see this and they cannot turn away. So this is, I want the world to see. Thank you so much for letting me share pieces today. I want the world to see. 7, I don't get to talk about my body hitting the ground or the hands that pinned me there. Everybody else gets to body bag me, slip me out when they are bored, fidget spin me and see if I am as pliable as their laws. See if the Black woman really is the mother of the world. Explore my womb looking for the Big Bang or God. Am I making you uncomfortable? 6. Did you know Planned Parenthood offers more than abortions? Did you know WIC don't pay for diapers? Did you know formula is expensive? And I can't breastfeed my baby in private because I have to work. And I can't breastfeed my baby in public because you only like my titties when they're bouncing in your face. Am I making you uncomfortable? 5. Judging me for putting juicy juice in my toddler's sippy cup. Like I got time to worry about high fructose corn syrup and artificial food coloring. When you just legalized marijuana, but my son is still getting stopped and frisked. How dare you paint white mothers addicted to opioids with the finest brushes and oils? After you slammed me into the concrete so many times, I couldn't help but have crack babies. Am I making you uncomfortable? 4. You take my kids and send them hurtling across the universe, lie and call them shooting stars when you know they're just plummeting asteroids, and then you judge me because my babies make craters they can't lift themselves out of by their bootstraps because you cut those too. Am I making you uncomfortable? 3, due to a surplus of Black children, they are inexpensive to adopt. People treat cheap things like they are disposable, like drive a car full of Black children over a cliff. Am I making you uncomfortable? 2, this is what it feels like to be a woman in a land more concerned with putting restrictions on my pussy than assault rifles. This is what it feels like to be anything but white in a country that values Confederate monuments more than my child's flesh. Am I making you uncomfortable? 1 good title. This is why Mamie left Emmett's casket open. Thank you all for letting me share.
Wow.
Yeah.
Christy Craig, who is Lindsay's publisher, put up a message that, oh, I lost it, hold on. Put up a message to you, Bianca, saying, chills, I love that poem.
Thank you so much, Christy. Thank you, everyone. They give me a little bit of hype, so I'm like, let me get through them as fast as possible.
Amazing. I love hearing you read. My God.
You had the stage set and ready. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Let's do this. I can do this. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I could listen to both of you guys read all night. I just found myself nodding and nodding and nodding along. And I had no idea that bell hooks had passed today, Lindsay. So thank you for leaving a moment of silence. It's been buried all day, reading and preparing for this. I haven't looked at my social media.
Yeah, no, it was such a shock. So, I mean, I just, it was just like, wow. And then here we are talking about, writers that we read and look up to and that, we're influenced by. And I definitely think she was a huge influencer for so many people, especially Black women.
Right. She's a giant. I mean, I was texting a friend. I said, she's like an aunt, it feels like a person that I knew. It's like, what are you talking about? I got a text. I was in a meeting. I got a text message. I said, but I can't read that right now. You're talking nonsense. Bell hooks has not passed away. I don't know what you're talking about. I will look at that later. And then social media, like it was an explosion of dedications to her, which was beautiful to see, but also so sad to memorialize another Titan for us, the people that like Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou and all the people that we love and grow up reading. And we're like, okay, they're teaching us how to be in this space, and to go on in this space without them feels ridiculous. But I also know they've left us so many gifts and so many lessons, and a guidebook. Honestly, their lives have been guidebooks for us to follow and still learn. They're still with us. So yeah, what an amazing life bell hooks led.
Yeah.
Well, that leads us to a question that we always like to ask. Clearly, you've named 3 writers that we're all familiar with who have influenced and inspired you and given you and mentored you both. But what books did you have a home of books? Did you grow up with books? What were your childhood books or even middle-aged books that informed you about being a writer? And I'll just say, Lindsay went first then, so now you go, Bridget.
I was just thinking, I did grow up in a home full of books. My parents loved to read. And so I started reading very early. And I have a grandmother who's a teacher, so she had me reading very early. And I'm thinking about the first book of poetry I ever picked up was The Dream Keeper by Langston Hughes. And I didn't know what I was reading. because I just saw a person on the cover. There was like a balloon or something or clouds. I didn't know what was happening. I was a kid. I grabbed it. I probably was like, I don't know, 6. I didn't know what I was doing. And my grandmother like sat down with me to read it with me. Like, okay, you don't understand it now, but it's okay. Let's read it. And so pretty much I was picking up everything. So I read, the Autobiography of Malcolm X, and I was like 9. I didn't know what was happening.
Wow.
But just any book on the shelf was open to me. And I thought that was such a blessing to have, because oftentimes adult things can be, tucked away, like, you'll read this later, you'll get this later. And my family would just say, well, you don't get it all right now, but you can read it right now, and then we'll talk about it if you have questions. And that really gave me a chance to read so much stuff that I probably shouldn't have been reading so young, but it also gave me a chance to like read things that are also age appropriate and that I love. So I was a big Babysitter's Club reader. I was all the little kid books, but I also read, Read a Dove. And I also read, I read Invisible Man very early. And I was like, what is happening? But it stuck with me. And so now later in life, I go back and reread those, and it really hits me. But yeah, I read everything. I couldn't be stopped. Just could not be stopped. What about you, Lindsay?
Oh my God, that is impressive to be reading that like at 9, the Autobiography of Malcolm X. Like I didn't read that till I was, I guess grad school. Like I felt bad that I didn't read it in undergrad. And I'm just like, wow, where has this book been all my life? That, and I remember reading Invisible Man and Richard Wright a lot, and Alice Walker, of course, Toni Morrison in undergrad. But yeah, my first days, I grew up I grew up with, people that were well-read, but it was mostly a family of musicians. So that was the big thing. And I knew early on, I couldn't play a lick of music, I couldn't sing. So I'm like, no, this isn't for me, Ma. I can't, I'm sorry, y'all can have that. And I was just really quiet and shy. And so I kind of gravitated towards the books. And even before I knew I wanted to be a writer, like I think I was, of course, like you mentioned, the Berenstain Bears, and I love the Dr. Seuss's, and I'm really into scary movies and books. So I picked up Stephen King a little early. I love Stephen King, and I love Darren Koontz, and people like that. Aaron Rice, who just passed too. But I think while you were reading, Bridget, the book that you actually made me think of, one of the first that I remember reading in middle school. And I remember literally some of my friends, we still try to keep up with each other. They will remind me of this, like, girl, do you remember when you were passing around this book? Omar Tyree's Fly Girl. That was the book. That was, and while you were reading the bamboo earrings and all of that, the neck roll and I was like, man, that book just was life to me. I had not read anything like it. And I'm like, this is me and my cousins, and this is like the people that I'm used to, being around. And I really, that book just passed like wildfire in our school. Like we were just passing it one person to another. And, it was one of those things. And, after that in college, it was Sister Soldier and, other books that came, on, but I didn't really get on the literary kick till like, I guess, grad school, a little, late grad school. So I was late in that department, but your book, just hearing you read, that really took me back to like, stuff that I enjoyed just for, entertainment before I even knew I wanted to write.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because wasn't that a time to be alive? And hopefully the times are still happening, but to have books that you kind of like smuggled across campus, you and all your friends are reading, you're waiting for the next person to read it. The book gets like dog-eared, and like that, the beauty of that physical thing that you were passing between friends. I remember Omar Tyree, of course, and speaking of seeing each other, Eric Jerome Dickey, who passed away just a few months ago, really great writer, LA-based writing, mostly for those early stories. I would read his books. I wasn't supposed to be. I was pulling them from the shelf. And those were some of the books where it was like, okay, you're not grown up enough for this. And I'm like, want to bet? Okay. And I would take the Eric Jerome Dickey books, put them into a Harry Potter book sleeve, like book cover. And because they were very thick, right? And I would like smuggle and read them at night. And my mom was like, you're still reading this Harry Potter book? Like, how long? Because I read very fast. So she knows that I should be done by now. And I was like, I'm just rereading it. It was so good. And I'm clearly reading the Eric Jerome Dickey because he was writing about a contemporary Los Angeles that I knew, that I recognize with the people who are grown up, so very grown up, way more grown up than I was at the time, but that it really taught me something about like how to reach an audience, right? Like he was reaching me. I was a kid, but I knew the LA he was talking about. And I didn't have to be an adult to know it. But when I became an adult and read it then, I was like, oh, I missed all of this, which is the beauty of reading, which is why I love what you said about like, the book found you when it was time, you know, like you didn't have to read it early. When it was time for you to read it, you read it. Yeah. And it hit you then. And that was the important part. There's a book that I read, The Bluest Eye, from middle school to high school to college. And I taught The Bluest Eye now that I teach college students. And that book has been with me for so long. I couldn't imagine having just read it this week, but if I did, I would be so excited for the opportunity to say, I just read The Bluest Eye for the first time. Like it you know, it's just that beautiful. So, me and you, we could probably pass books back and forth right now.
Okay.
I have a couple books I can ship to you. Like, check this out, check that out. We'll do it through Kindle, make it a little bit less messy to share the books. But yeah, no, that was me too. Cool.
I'm so struck by what you said, Bridget, about LA appearing, because both of you guys have the cities figure so prominently in your work. So I don't really have a specific question that I'm trying to ask you about that, but is there anything more that you want to say about the importance of place and how that figures into your work?
I'm going to throw in one more part to that, is in terms of, are there books beyond the ones mentioned that particularly gave you a connection with your cities?
That's interesting.
I mean, I guess for me, and I know this is another one of our literary ancestors, but she really did her thing in New York, but a lot of people don't know or might forget that she was raised in St. Louis, and that's Ntozake Shange. So a lot of, I remember like reading her stuff for the first time, and not even just what she's known for, which is for Color Girls, but some other stuff. I think it's Cypress, I'm saying it wrong now, I should know this, Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo. And then she wrote about her childhood growing up in St. Louis, and she really kind of just made a character out of St. Louis. And that was one of the first books that I remember reading that actually personified, my city. Like I've always heard of, and I loved it, which is a one reason why I cherished the time that I was being able to be fortunate to go to California for a minute, because I had read so many books about California. I read so many books about New York and the South, New Orleans, and just finally, getting a chance to actually read something that was, St. Louis based, or, how the city was for her through her eyes. And I thought, it was great. She's one that stands out to me for that.
Well, that made me so excited. For me, besides Eric Jerome Dickey, Walter Mosley's Easy Rawlins series and his Phyllis Jones series are very much LA. And it's a beautiful thing, because the first Easy Rawlins books, and he's a mystery writer primarily for that series. It starts in the 1940s, and he works his way to almost basically present, like 90s, right? With the same character kind of growing with the city. So you see the city change in texture and population. You see laws change. You catch up with the character of Easy Rawlins every few years. You get a peek at what's been happening in LA, right? You see how LA has changed, especially my part of LA, South Central LA, right? And so he's someone I always go back to when it comes to thinking about LA. But really when I think about writing about place, I also think about the incredible August Wilson and how he focused on Pittsburgh for that 10 cycle of plays in that same neighborhood, those same blocks, and really, again, showed us a century, really, it's a century of time. It goes from the late 1800s until the 90s. It's just a beautiful thing to dedicate your time to really painting place. And so I always wanted to paint my place as beautifully as they did, like Toni Morrison does for Harlem in jazz, how she describes it, what she does for Ohio, Lorraine, Ohio in The Bluest Eye, like Edward P. Jones when it came to like the DC, Baltimore area for The Known World. All these writers, I'm like, okay, you're putting your city in the literary landscape in a position that we don't normally see, because we don't always look to the inner, the outer, the over, the southern, the western, wherever we put the Black people in that area, we don't normally look over there at them. And so I want to do that with my book, where, I'm writing not fiction, unfortunately, so I can't give you all the details, but I can at least like anchor you there for a second, like, hey, just I'm in LA, just so you know, but this could be anywhere. It could be anywhere, but it is LA for me, if that's important to you. So yeah, place is so important. I'm glad you asked that question. Y'all, this is good.
Yeah. Another one you made me think of was Richard Wright's Black Boy. I think that really centers Mississippi. And I don't think, you know, the Deep South, even now to this day, you hear about it, you hear New Orleans and you hear, but in Texas, but it's hard to kind of, you know, grasp the fabric of the Deep South. And I love that he, you know, kind of set that up and just showed like where he came from before he, you know, hit the Shy and, you know, did other stuff.
Absolutely. That reminded me of Zoro Neale Hurston.
Oh, yes.
Everything. I mean, she was an anthropologist, so of course she understood how place was important to culture, to space, even the migration of people across space. Like every book that we have histories of places because she was writing about those places, be it factual accounts or fictional, right? We know more about the history of a place because of what she was doing, because she was actually going out into the community to get information, to retrieve these histories that we could talk about these places in some kind of reverential way, at least, if we couldn't have the places anymore. So yeah, place is super important. I think maybe just important to the African-American literary like scope of like anchoring ourselves in time and place is really important when you have like that black hole of slavery where you couldn't really anchor anything into it. To have a chance to anchor is such a privilege. So it's like, I got to show you where we are, even if it's fantastical. Yes. You must know I'm on moon 349 because I want you to understand what's happening there. Like we really want to make sure you know where you are in time and space.
Yeah. And kind of like what you said, I'm sorry to keep, but kind of like what you said before about how it makes people actually look, and you kind of shine a flashlight on people that aren't normally seen. And if it's like, that's the whole point of just making everybody feel seen, because there's some places, you know, I don't know, you just don't get that in regular media, and you know, people want to distort the narrative or, you know, take the attention away from this, whatever they want to call a subculture or whatnot. And no, that's not how it should be.
Exactly.
It's one of the conversations that comes up a lot in your book, Lindsay, is this discussion over whether people should stay in St. Louis and fight to improve conditions in St. Louis or leave to go to California. And then they're the people who leave and go to California and become activists when they get there. It's just such a nuanced conversation. You have the real estate developer and the activist, and then the politician.
And those are very much like the three that you get like in the world today. I mean, you see it everywhere. So yeah, no, it was really important to kind of show that and kind of, you know, flip the narrative and just make sure, you know, to look at it from, because I think that a lot of times people think that the Black community is monolithic, and, you know, there's diverse perspectives and opinions and just personalities in every culture, you know, and that includes ours. So it was really important, you know, to kind of try to show that, and, you know, following other people's footsteps who do it very beautifully.
That made me think of a section from W.B. Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folk, where he talks about like the different types of, and Elaine Locke too in The New Negro, the different types of Black people and what they do and their purposes of serving. And this is a new person, they do this. And at some point, everyone kind of has their little role that they play. And they're trying to like figure out like, am I doing the right thing right now?
Right.
Is this what I'm supposed to be doing to help my people? Am I helping? Like, what's happening here? That question is constantly like above your head. And I think from your novel, you are grappling with that really beautifully to show the humanity of people who make those choices and why they're not easy to make, right? And that it is something that you do think about, and that does have consequences possibly that you didn't even anticipate later. So really beautiful.
Thank you.
All true.
So I want to jump back before I'll tell everyone that is watching. So before this show started, we were discussing romance books. And I said, I really hope that we're going to discuss the romance books once the conversation is being filmed. So let's go into it. Let's talk about these romance books. Yeah. Oh, look, we've got some.
I've got some. I actually just got these two in the mail. So you've heard what I read myself, like what my own work. It's a little bit on the, you know, take a spoonful now before bed and then think about it tomorrow kind of poetry that kind of hits you really hard. So I needed an escape last year. I started reading romance voraciously. I'm at about maybe 400 books read from last May to today. Yes, I read a lot of books. And so I've been reading a lot of contemporary Black romance and just contemporary romance. And so these are two. This one is The Dating Playbook by Farrah Rashan. The other one is How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days, which is interesting, by K.M. Jackson, also goes by Quanah Jackson. And I feel like I've fallen into a space in which I can imagine futures that feel so much better, and presence that feels so much better than our current present sometimes. And I do need that hope. So I think of them as like my little hope shots, you know, of like, things are very difficult. And I write about those things and I understand those things to be, you know, front of mind, honestly. But then romance doesn't ignore those things. It just also says, but in the meantime, we're living and we're loving and we're making family, we're figuring things out. There might be drama, but in the end, we still are figuring things out. And it could happen shortly in a book or in your real life, like whatever it is. So I've been deep in the romance. I also read a lot of books by an author named Christina C Jones. She's actually an independent author. And she has a book called Behind the Scenes, which is really beautiful, about LA. Because I was like, oh, okay, hello, LA. A little Vegas in there. I was like, okay, I see the West Coast represented in this book. I like this a lot. And it really like showed me, I mean, these Black independent authors of all kinds, they're fighting for the kind of platform that like we get a lot, right? We get a chance to pop in and have talks like this. And I'm like, well, if I can talk about you to my friends, then I'm helping, right? Because I love what you're doing. And I think that's a part of the literary tradition that we forget about, the citizenship of saying, what we were talking about earlier, I'm reading this thing. Do you want to read this thing? You should read this thing. You'll like it. And so that's why I love like this, even I had these prepared for our talks. I was like, yo, what are writers reading? Romance novels for me. And then also all the other heavy stuff that keeps me, you know, from floating away, because I need to be able to get into other literary things. But romance novels are big for me right now. What are you reading, Lindsay?
Oh my God. Well, first, can I just say, and I had to write that down for anybody who's interested, and also so I can remember, because I've been really, I mean, you motivate me to just go and read romance now. I've been hearing a lot about romance books, and people are like, girl, you know, it's a great escape. And, you know, like you said, just from the weight of, you know, the world and other stuff, you know. So I've been interested in, I just haven't done it yet. So thank you for, you know, just for sharing that. Now I have somewhere that I can get started, you know. That's amazing. It just seems, yeah, it just seems like a breath of fresh air. So, but I mean, in terms of what I'm reading, I've really been into, besides novel and verses, I will say one is, and you probably have heard, I got the chance to read with her earlier this summer, Mahogany L. Brown, The Chlorine Sky. Oh my gosh, I'm like reading this for the second time now. And I mean, I haven't read too many novel and verses. So, you know, and I know she's an amazing poet too. And just being able to read that and how she, you know, puts those two together and just this whole mixed genre is just nothing short of amazing to me. Like, so I'm really into that. Oh yeah, thank you for putting the whole, yeah, the author too for that. The romance
is amazing. Have you heard? I want to teach her a book so bad because I'm like, this is beautiful. Chlorine Sky is gorgeous, and she has another book coming out. Yeah, another book coming out too. So I'm like, okay. I played a clip of her reading from that novel in verse, and my students were like, why aren't we reading that right now? I want to read that right now, because I'm teaching a different novel in verse, which I don't know if you've heard of it before. Everybody Looking by Candace Elo.
No.
Gorgeous book. I was looking around me because I'm teaching it right now, but I've tossed all my books away from me because it's finals time right now. I don't want to look at them, but it's a gorgeous novel in verse. If you haven't read it yet, check it out. It's got a little everything in there. It's really a beautiful book. I'm recommending because I think you would really you would dig it.
I'm sorry,
what you write.
Who's
Candace Elo.
Candace Elo. Okay.
It's called Everybody Looking. Beautiful, beautiful book. It's a hearty story. I'm going to put it in the chat too for folks who are watching.
Okay.
Really, really brilliant book.
Yeah, no, I would love to read. I mean, she really just, Mahogany L. Brown, she just really got me into, you know, the novel in verse, because, you know, I love just reading poetry anyway, but to see her like mix the two, it's just like, wow, it's amazing. So I definitely, and I will check for her next book coming out as well. I'm writing in chat too in case people want to know. And then of course, the short stories, I've been trying my hand at more short stories lately. And during that process, and even before, I've really taken up to reading more short stories. So I don't know if you guys had heard of The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha, was it Phil, y'all? Oh my gosh, it's everywhere. If you guys have not started this, I'm just getting started with this. It's great. I mean, it's life. It is truly life. And then also there's Ricardo Wilson. He's Afro Latin guy, and he's this is from Pank Books. He's located in Vermont right now. And Apparent Horizon and other stories. It's pretty good. I mean, I'm really in the short stories right now, and then the novel and verse, and then every now and then when I can get in a horror story, a good horror story, I try to put that in. If I can find both, if you guys know of any good horror short stories or sci-fi short story or even anthologies, I love anthologies in that genre, please let me know.
Thinking of, have you read the short story collection Heads of the Colored People by Nafisa Thompson Spire?
Yes, that's a great one. I read that a couple years. Yes, that's amazing work.
Gosh. There's another one. Oh gosh, Chris Stuck. It's oh god, it's I think it's called Give My Love to the Savages. I want to say it's called.
I've heard of that. Okay.
It was just longlisted, I think, for a Penn Literary Awards. I think I just saw it today.
Okay.
And really gorgeous. And then an author, I want to say her name is Lillian Rivera. I just read a short story by her, which was scary as all get out. Now I'm not a scary short story reader, but I read that thing. Okay, I read it because, and it was called The Hate with an 8 instead of the A. It's available for free online. I was like, you are scaring me to death, but also give me more.
Yes.
Scare me to death forever.
Yes.
Because I want to know more about the thing that's really going to make me have a nightmare, but I must read this. Because why is it so beautiful? How dare you scare me and then also make me want to cry happy tears?
Okay. Oh my God. Oh, okay. I gotta read that. The Hate. Okay. Wow.
Let me just remind you, the two of you, that all of these books you mentioned, every single one is going to go on a bookshop list that we link to our website. So anybody wants to know anything more about it, they'll all be there.
Okay. Great.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Good to know.
Thank you so much.
You know, one thing I'm curious about, Bridget, there are too many, I think I can only think of E. Cummings, who's written in all lowercase. And I'm wondering, and no punctuation, and I'm wondering if there are particular writers who you've been inspired to, or maybe got permission to write in that way, or is it just something that you came into?
Well, I think it's twofold. One, I think the lowercase really, initially I took inspiration from Bell Hooks, because Bell Hooks also keeps her name in lowercase. And that was important for me because what I thought was my name is no more important than any other word on this page. And if I'm already writing everything in lowercase, then why in the world do I need to be capitalized out of everything else? I'm the least important thing about this poem. Right? Who wrote it is cool to know, so you can find that person and tell them thank you, but really the words are what matters. And so once I decided I wanted to write in lowercase in the first place, there was no need to like capitalize my business, unless it's like stylistically set by somebody else, then they can do what they want to do. I'll take it. But as far as not using punctuation and just as a literary device, not using capitalization, I discovered early in my workshop experience in my MFA program that people paid, in my opinion, too much attention to those elements and too little attention to what they were actually reading. They were so caught up in, should there be a semicolon here or an M dash or this or that? And I'm like, I do not care. I put the punctuation there, I will take it out. And so what I discovered was that I wanted people to get a certain experience. I had intentionality behind my work that did not require them to grapple with the conventions of English grammar, right? And so they needed to just simply get this message, see these words. Line breaks could serve me just as well, making decisions in other ways that can make you maybe stop and rethink and reread that sentence again. That's fine, right? I was okay with that slowing down of reading, and then also a force to not look for what you're comfortable with to keep you in a poem, but instead to let the poem do what it's going to do. And so once I started, I could not stop. Yes, my spell check hates me. My autocorrect refuses to allow the lowercase to fly, even in my own name. As much as I type it in lowercase, my phone's like, are you sure? I think it should actually be this. So yeah, I took a pretty big stance on that about 10 years ago, and I've held closely to it. And what I see is that I do get a lot more people saying, yeah, I read the piece. I didn't see any punctuation, but I just took my time. And I figured it out, it made me slow down. I'm like, well, that was the point, to make you slow down and to make you really think beyond the realms of whatever rules you think you're supposed to follow. Forget that. Read the poem. Okay, now what? So that was kind of the motivation.
That's why I love poetry, because it just demands that you just forsake every rule, everything that you learn, unlearn it, and just focus on the content. It's amazing like that. And you just explained it so beautifully. I mean, that is so true. That's so true.
Thank you. But I still correct grammar in my papers when I grade them, just to be clear. My students are like, you don't use punctuation in your poems. So do I have? Yes, you do. In your paper, I want to see all the punctuation, capitalization. Yes.
Well, that's, like learn the basic skills and then make decisions of what you want to include. That's something that I've seen in all fields.
Before you riff, get a feel for the basic rhythm and then riff, right? And it's like, to use a music metaphor, which is not my strong suit either, Lindsay, so I do not make music. But if you really want to have a really great jazz ensemble, you get that bass line going, that basic, that tempo, and then you can play around once you know what the beat is. Once you know the rhythm and you have some syncopation between the people playing, then we can follow when you want to go off into a riff or something different. Now we can all make harmony together, but you have to kind of learn the basics first. And I teach the basics. I teach composition, so I teach the basics. And then after that, go to creative writing and do whatever the heck you want to do, because it's your business. And I love that freedom. And I love to encourage that freedom among students. Like, please do what you want to do. And if it doesn't work, you can change your mind. It's easy.
You just got a comment. It says, Bridget makes more music with her words than most folks with an instrument in their hands.
Oh, I like that. Oh, hey. It's like a great word right there.
I receive it, because my singing voice, you don't want. You don't want that. The words, yes. The voice, not at all. So thank you. Thank you for that.
I'm going to tell you, that was written by John Schneider, who is my husband, who is a musician and always has been a musician, and that's high words of praise.
Thank you. Oh my goodness.
Coming from a musician. Woo.
Yeah. I'm putting that on my CV. Thank you so much. I will be. Thank you.
Well, I want to just remind everyone who's watching that if you guys have any questions, you can put them in either the chat or the Q&A. Because we have about 7 or 8 minutes. So if you have any questions to ask, now's the time to ask them. And then do you guys have any questions for each other?
I have a question for Bridget. When you're writing, like in terms of just when you're writing your own work, your own poetry, like, are there any, I guess, the people always talk about the reading or writing routine. Do you have a reading routine? Like, are there certain books that you gravitate towards more than others? That, is there a pattern that you're seeing, like when you write your poems, or does it depend on content or, other factors?
You know what? I thought I didn't have one for a very long time. Any routine. I thought I was just, poems would just pop in my mind. I'd grab my cell phone, get it down really quickly, and then hopefully, hope for the best. But I think now my reading routine when I really want to write is to read nonfiction first, and not any nonfiction, but things that are more on the memoir side, personal essay side, because it lets me get lost in that person's life and then step out of it. And then suddenly I have all these ideas. So like I was reading C Jones, How We Fight for Our Lives. I taught that book for a year. So I was reading it constantly because I needed to remember certain things. And every time I would finish reading, I put the book away and then I would grab my cell phone and I would write down some notes to myself, or maybe a poem would come out, an idea or an image would have come to my head, in the middle of reading. And then one day I realized, oh, that's what I do. Mm-hmm. Because I do often finish reading something and then go and make notes on that thing, but also on the side in the margins, I'm making notes on something else that's more for me. And so I think reading more nonfiction for some reason, and I don't know, maybe it's my new obsession besides romance novels, but it really lets me release something about vulnerability, which is really important when it comes to poetry, to be really vulnerable. And sometimes it's hard to, you cannot finesse that. Right. And so when you read someone's memoir or their personal essay, like Jessamine Ward has an essay about the loss of her husband to COVID-19, right, in the middle of everything that's happening. Every time I read her essay, and I play the audio too, every time I read it, I want to not just weep for her, but also just write about love. I want to write about loss. I want to write about family. And I'm working on that, you know, so I read it a lot so I can kind of, you know, get myself going. And I love the idea of her vulnerability, giving me permission to also be vulnerable in the pieces. So I think that's my reading process that helps my writing. It's not always magic, but it works. It works without me even thinking about it, which is what is beautiful about it. What about you? What do you read when you want to write? Or can you read? I know novelists. Can you read other novels while you're trying to write a novel?
That's hard. I will say it. When I was in the final stages of this book of Bone Broth, I was looking for stuff that really touched. If I was going to read a novel, because I couldn't read just everything or anything. I was focused on reading stuff that was related to class just as much as it was race. And one book that really stuck out to me, just that was a highlight of that year for me. I wanted to stop, you have those books where you want to finish it, but you're like, I don't want to get to the end because then it'll be over. Yeah, it was one of those. And that's Celeste Ng's Little Fires Everywhere. Oh my God. Yeah. Amazing book. And the series now, the Kerry Washington, I love that, but that book just was really on to something for me. But yeah, that's, in terms of novels, when I'm writing fiction, I find that, poetry helps. Like a lot of times the images, you guys are just amazing with just imagery. And that's kind of how I like to envision a scene first. And poetry really just helps me get in that vein of writing. If I'm writing essays, I do like to read nonfiction, because you're right. I like to tap into other people's, how they're able to find that courage to be vulnerable. One person that sticks out to me, she's an up and coming YA novelist. That's Ariel Benson. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's got a really great essay in Catapult. I believe it's Catapult, and it's something on loneliness, and just, talking about the, being lonely in her city, which is just amazing. Like I was just like, the way she really tapped into her, her vulnerability was just, it was awe inspiring to me. So I would check her out if you can. But when I'm writing nonfiction, I like to read nonfiction as well.
Isn't that beautiful? I think people think that creative nonfiction kind of like doesn't have the luster, right, of other types of memoir or nonfiction, right? Because it's a chance to be imaginative, but also to remember, but also to be present. And we take for granted the beauty of that work and just how much time it takes to then have the real be as you imagined it, to kind of put that on a page. It's great to hear that both of us are reading that, and it kind of helps us go. I love it. I can't write it, but I wish I could, because I see the beauty of it. But the long form I can't handle. I'm like, y'all, I got a poem for you, not an essay. I'm so sorry.
Hey, I'll take it. Anything from you. I love it.
Thank you.
Well, tell us what you're working on now, and then we can wrap it up. But what are we looking forward to?
I'll pass it to Lindsay first, because this book is hot off the presses. Okay.
Again, I'm a horror fan. I'm a horror fiend. So I'm trying my hand right now at a collection of short stories. It's horror, sci-fi inspired, or in that vein. So I'm having fun with it. That's all I can say. I'm having fun with it, and ideas, they come, and if the story is not right there, I'm getting a lot of skeletons of the story and kind of just filling in as I go. And I'm still at that adventure stage. Like I'm just, going with it, however it comes out, however it comes to me, that's how I'm writing it down. Try not to, get too heady about it and think so much, and, being able to kind of separate myself, from it and, put that space or that distance in it and come back to it if I need to, which I'm hoping the holidays at this time that can kind of help me do it, kind of, set stuff down and then come back to it later. So we'll see what happens, but that's me.
My fingers are crossed. My fingers are crossed that we all get all the rest that we've been storing up and waiting for winter that it comes.
Yeah.
I hope it really hits us. For me, I have to be honest. I thought I was working on another book. I thought I was doing that. I was like, yeah, I'm writing poetry. I got a book coming soon. And then I had to stop myself because I think poetry lives a different literary life than other things. And I was in a rush to like, well, make another one. And I'm like, it took me 3 years to write this one, Bridget, like slow down and just write and see what happens. So in my mind, I'm writing a new book of poetry that is a book primarily consisting of love poems. That is not my strong suit, but is a pursuit. So I think if nothing else, I have a book that shows my work and shows me trying to get to the love poem, right? That is what I imagine I can create. And so that feels tangible in my mind, though every day that I write something that's not a love poem, I'm like, Bridget, what is happening? You're supposed to be writing love poems. What are you doing? But it doesn't, you can't force it. But I'm working on that. And I'm also working on getting back out into the literary space here in LA to start doing more events here and hosting more events here and really giving more opportunity for local Los Angeles-based writers to be seen and heard while we have this virtual platform open and ready for us, right? Like we're all in different places right now, all four of us, and yet we're able to hear from each other, which is a beautiful thing that we could not do pre-pandemic because we're limited to our little shells, our little confines in our little states and cities and whatever the case is. So I want to get back out there and start bringing people together as much as they've been brought together, but more and more and more, and kind of crossing the country, but also bringing these LA writers to a place that need to be seen. So I'm thinking, I have so many ideas about that, which I might reach out to you all like, hey, do you want to do an event? Because I think that the audience that you all have here in the space you have would be great for a little person like me from LA to be on a Zoom with people from all over the place. This is dope. This is dope. So I want to work on doing more of that stuff right now, but maybe some love poems. We'll see what happens.
Can't wait. Can't wait to see both of what you're writing. I mean, horror is almost too horrifying for me. I have a very low, I'm very reactive to what I read. And if I get scared, I really get scared. So somehow, but I trust you. So I really do look forward to what you're going to be writing, Lindsay. And love poems. I mean, I still remember Kenneth Patchen when I was in high school wrote love poems that I just fed my fantasies probably more than was possible at that age. But still, I mean, I do love love poems. So this will be something to look forward to.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for bringing that up too about just, getting other writers together. I'm interested in seeing how that plays out for you, because that's something, a passion of mine in a little bit in the future that I would like to do for St. Louis. I don't think that, there's a writing community here, which, I'm still tapping into, I haven't been gone for so long. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out for you.
Hopefully we'll all be doing in our different spaces and like have a summit, right? Like we'll all come together virtually or some other way,
yes,
and be heard and seen, because you're right, there's a literary community everywhere. You just got to kind of find it and poke and see, okay, so what's happening? And maybe when you become a part of it or you bring people in, it changes the scape or gives you more opportunities and options, which I think is so beautiful about what we do as writers, is that you can make community out of anything, a book you pass to a friend, a poem that you share, a link to this, a tweet about that, and suddenly you're all gathered around this fire talking about this really great thing. So right now we're gathering around bone broth. My friends already know. I'm reading it right now, y'all. Don't spoil it for me. I will tell you soon, but pick it up if you haven't already, because I think you need to read this book. This is giving me J. California Cooper, Toni Morrison vibes. Okay, and we need to read it. So yes, I'm pumping it.
Thank you. I really appreciate the love. Really appreciate that love.
Thank you.
Well, this was fantastic. Everyone needs to read both of these. Look.
Yes.
And I I promise not to I promise not to spoil the ending, but the ending is fantastic. You're going to be blown away when you get to the end. And these poems will keep you up at night, just going back to them, like wake up at 2 a.m. Did I really read that? Let me go read that. I did.
It's amazing.
That is what I read.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And I will totally be following you and making sure I keep up with where you're at in the process of the love poems as well. That's just, oh my God, we need more on that.
I will read your scary stories and in the daylight with a flashlight and and a buddy. And I will definitely read them.
All right. Well, this was fantastic. I loved the conversation. And everyone, let's see. Thank you so much for joining us on Who Writers Read. Today's show will be archived on our website, along with all of our previous shows. You can go there to watch them. All the titles mentioned today, as Jody's already said, will be listed in our bookshop. Our next show will be next year on Wednesday, January 26th, 2022. We'll have Ukrainian writer and literary scholar Oksana Luchanya, and she'll be in conversation with writer, educator, and activist Oskol Melnichuk. So we hope to see you there. You're invited as always. Love to everyone.
Thank you, Ginger and Jody, for hosting this and just for putting this together. It's a great concept. I love it.
Thank you. And Lindsay and Bridget, you have just been delightful. And this is when Ginger and I first conceived of Who Writers Read. You guys epitomize what we had hoped for. So thank you. Thank you. It's very validating.
Yeah, I like having the top of my head pulled off and things just dumped into my brain.
It's a great way to put it.
Yes. We have books to put in there. We're like, yes. And
yes, I know, I'm ready. I'm ready. Oh, and everyone look at the camera and smile. Let me get our cover for YouTube. All right, that looks fantastic. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, and thank you for watching. Thank all of you, attendees, everybody. This has been grand.
Thank you.